part two of the screencast on Alice Walker's everyday use. When I left off last, I was talking about when the mother realized that it was Maggie's portion, those quilts that she wanted Maggie to have instead of Dee, because she knew that while Dee would hang them up and put them on the wall and treat them as antiquities, Maggie really understood the legitimate purpose and what they were for. And so she says, when I looked at her like that, something hit me in the top of my head and ran down to the soles of my feet, just like when I'm in church and the Spirit of God touches me and I get happy and shout. I did something I've never done before, hugged Maggie to me, then dragged her on into the room, snatched the quilts out of Miss Wayne Garrow's hands, and dumped them into Maggie's lap. Maggie just sat there on my bed with her mouth open. Take one of the two of the others, I said to Dee, but she turned without a word and went out to Hakima Barber. You just don't understand, she said as Maggie and I came out to the car. What don't I understand? I wanted to know. Your heritage, she said. And then she turned to Maggie, kissed her, and said, you ought to try to make something of yourself too, Maggie. It's really a new day for us. But from the way you and Mama still live, you'd never know it. She put on some sunglasses that hid everything above the tip of her nose and her chin. Maggie smiled, but a real smile, not scared. After we watched the car dust settle, I asked Maggie to bring me a dip of snuff, and then the two of us just sat there enjoying until it was time to go in the house and go to bed. So, Mom takes the quilts away from Dee and gives them back to Maggie, because Maggie understands their value and what they are really for. Dee kind of fails to understand that the heritage of the items that she covets comes precisely from their everyday use. And it's their relation to the lived experience of the people who've used them and continue to use them. Part of the beauty of those objects are the fact that they've been so frequently used. When she remarks about the stains from the frequent use on the wood of the benches and on the butter churn, um, and they've been used by so many hands in their family, their heritage. It's a family history that Dee seems to be ignorant of, which is, for her to be so learned and intelligent and worldly and, stylish. She has Maggie kind of has a one up on her in that area. So these quilts specifically, um, you know, epitomize that lived experience, that heritage that Dee just doesn't seem to understand. So, um, Maggie, the quilts are reminders of specific people. She says, I can't remember Grandma Dee without the quilts, Maggie says, when she moved to give them up. And it's that exact statement that causes her mother to take away the quilts from Dee and hand them to Maggie, because Maggie understands that history and values them and will value them much more deeply than Dee will. So Maggie leaves. She tells her mom she doesn't understand her own heritage. She encouraged Maggie to make something of herself. And so Maggie and mom sit out in the yard and they're relieved, they appreciate where they come from, even though it's not something that Dee appreciates or values. So Dee seems to be unable to separate her newfound cultural identity, her Africanness, from her own long-standing need to feel superior to her mother and her sister. And it's that lack of respect for her family members, dead and alive, that, you know, provides that clarity for Maggie and the mother to kind of appreciate each other and that heritage.